As I've mentioned in the past, am a huge fan of Android. I have an iPhone, and this is what's in my hand right now. But I must say that I don't enjoy the overall experience. And of course, there's plenty of people who give their opinions. Some will, tout about this, tout about that. And I definitely am one of those individuals who sometimes chooses to nitpick, but other times just needs to accept what is reality. And then also sometimes just states what's reality. And of course, what is reality? Is it what is for all people? Is it what is for you? But for me, it's really my experience with this. So I believe I'm going to title this video Goodbye to my iPhone 12 mini for now, because there's a good chance, as always, you leave one ecosystem and you jump right back into it because you realize it's not as bad as you thought that it was. So, before I try to start comparing this with other devices, which I'm sure I'll do without actually attempting to do so, I'll just state why I feel like I need to go back to really the only other choice, which in this situation is Android. So, first thing that I am not a huge fan of when it comes to the iPhone is the Lightning port. Back when I got my iPhone 5C, I was ecstatic because I had taken a break from iPhone briefly. I had an iPhone 4. That was my first iPhone. Then I jumped over to Android for a little bit. So, of course, I was used to micro USB and maybe even a few mini USB phones. And then just seeing a new port, it's exciting. I remember getting a couple of lightning cables from Amazon and being excited about, oh, this new port. That was back in 2014, I believe, maybe 15. The year now is currently 2022. So we're talking 6 or 7 years ago, depending on exactly when I got that iPhone 5C. And here we are. We're still using this exact same port. And as I record these videos, I'm using my Galaxy. I have a Sony Xperia that I might attempt to use every once in a while. I would like to use the iPhone, but the limitation at that point becomes the Lightning port. And not the port itself, but I guess the logical undertones of this port still relies on or still uses USB 2.0. So if I'm making a 10 to 20 minute video, sometimes they go a little bit longer, and I'm trying to transfer that from the phone to my computer, I don't know how long it's going to take. I haven't attempted to transfer stuff at USB 2 speeds in quite a while, mainly because all of my Android devices have USB 3.0 at a minimum. Some of them might. I don't know the full naming structure anymore, the nomenclature, because the USB naming convention is not as good as it should be, and they continue to change stuff. But what I do know is that this is USB 2.0, which is 10 times slower than USB 3. So we're talking, 480 megabits per second compared to, at a minimum, when we're talking USB 3 standards and above, 5 gigabits per second. So it would take forever to get something off this phone. And I know Apple touts, their camera quality, and people are right to say that the video recording on an iPhone is really good. But unless you're attempting to just upload that to some type of social media site, I would say airdrop it from your phone to another Apple product. But even then, airdrop isn't as fast as people think it is. I mean, it's good for transferring a large batch of photos. But if we're talking high-res video that is 10, 15, 20 minutes long, it's still not going to be that fast. And at the end of the day, a wire is just going to be a better option when that wire is not dependent on USB 2.0. So that's issue number one. The port itself, because of physically I now have an additional cable right next to my bed, which is a Lightning port that's specifically for this one device. Meanwhile, I have a USB-C charger right here. This is actually just took a screenshot. This is actually my laptop charger, but I use it to charge my phone, my laptop, my Sony headphones that are right there. What else? My Pixel Buds, which I think I have right here in my pocket. Yeah, so these things charge via USB-C, and my whole thoughts on USB-C definitely are for another video, but just the convenience and how simple it makes my life and a lot of other people's lives when they can have one charger here. And this is definitely a fast charger since I think it's 65 watts. So it's for the laptop, but it works with everything else. And I have a slower charger next to my bed that I can still plug my everything into that isn't this one device. So that's issue number one. Okay. Issue number two is, and I don't even have to unlock to talk about it. iMessage. iMessage it's good. It's nice. It's very convenient. It takes what BBM used to be and merges it with just your standard SMS client. So now you have the ability to send those high resolution videos and photos to other people. What's the caveat? Those other people also have to have iPhones because iMessage only works with iOS, iPadOS, macOS. So not just iPhones, but other Apple products. And in 2022, and I'll probably keep referencing the year a little more than I should, but the whole point of computing is interoperability. And of course, people are going to have their own opinions about that. But my opinion is that you should have a device that works equally well with things in its own ecosystem as it does with things outside of its ecosystem. Now, I get there are going to be some limitations because if you are able to control the hardware and the software or the software across various products, I get the experience might be a little better. But to the point that iMessage is so much better than standard SMS, and that if you are using the competitor's operating system, so Android, you don't have the ability to have your standard SMS client benefit from what iMessage brings to the table. And I've given up, and I feel most people have given up on the hope that Apple would create an iMessage app for other devices. So whether it's Android or Windows, definitely not Linux, but just other operating systems, mobile or desktop, that's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. The C-suite executives of Apple have made that clear long ago, where they were having their conversations via email, and they made it clear that iMessage is a reason for parents to buy their kids phones. iMessage is also a reason to not leave the Apple ecosystem. I agree. I cannot argue with how convenient it is. That's one of the reasons I even have this phone. In fact, that's probably the only real reason I have this phone, because the day that I had, I think, my Galaxy, I got a Sony Xperia 10 Mark IV in the mail. I took my SIM card out and put it in that phone, took it out of this phone and put it in that Sony. And I'd say maybe 10 minutes later, I just happened to be on a phone call with my mom, and she let me know, hey, I tried to send you something, but it said, not sent or not delivered. And I said, oh, that's because, and I explained the situation. I'd taken my SIM card out, I'm testing another phone. And even though I turned iMessage off on my phone, I've turned it off on this device, it still was affecting her. And that, for me, is another problem when it comes to this, is that it is so ingrained into the operating system, the overall experience, that by me changing something on my end, it's now affecting other people. And that's just unfortunate. So, literally yesterday, I was testing out a Google Pixel 6a. Put my SIM card in that phone, making a few phone calls, sending a couple text messages, and I received a message from somebody I hadn't talked to in a little while, and she immediately was like, oh, one, happy birthday. My birthday was the other day. And two, which Android device did you get? I guess assuming that for my birthday, I got a new Android phone. And the fact that she could realize that so quickly, just because in the app, instead of saying iMessage in the little text box, it just says regular text message, and the whole green bubble versus blue bubble thing, she was able to immediately see, oh, Ben is probably no longer using an iPhone. Now, I complain about that, and it's not the end of the world, but it definitely is something that I'm like, all right, Apple, I feel like you could open this up a little more. Plus, the whole green versus blue bubble thing they could just make them all the same color. I mean, I feel like that legit has become an issue in some communities, and it really shouldn't matter, but it does. They could all be green, they could all be blue. I would suggest all being blue because it's easier on the eyes, or just change the green to something else that is also easier on the eyes. Because, yeah, that green is a pretty harsh color. And I feel that they definitely chose that on purpose. And I was listening to Steve Jobs' book, and I believe they said, well, or maybe somebody else said it, I don't know, but blue represented newer things that are pretty much internet based, and green represented older things. I don't understand why if that is the case, I don't understand why the FaceTime app on the phone is green. The phone app being green makes sense. The messaging app icon is also green, but I don't even know if that was a true statement, but it definitely is something that something to think about. And when it comes to iMessage being on other platforms, like I said, that's not going to happen. But Apple adopting RCS, which I've complained about before, that is something they could do. And who knows if they're going to do that. At some point they will. I mean, that could be, it's not going to be this year, not going to be next year. I mean, it'll be years into the future. But yeah, it's just kind of frustrating knowing that, well, if I decide to take my SIM card out of this phone because I want to use something else, now it's going to affect the experience of other people. That sucks. These apps should be platform, not agnostic, the other one where you don't know what's going on. You know what I'm trying to say. You should be able to use whatever application that you want, and the operating system shouldn't matter, and therefore the people who you are interacting with shouldn't know that, hey, you're using a different phone today. It should, oh, you're still using WhatsApp or Telegram, or if RCS were universal across the two operating systems, they would probably still say, oh, it doesn't say iMessage anymore. It's now something else, so you probably aren't using an iPhone. But even then, the user experience would be better for both people. So that's that. What else don't I like about this phone? Now let me go ahead and unlock this guy. So right here is the app library, okay? So kind of sucks that the app library it even exists. I'll just leave it at that. It kind of sucks. So yeah, let me go ahead and swipe up. The app library. Another thing that I'm not a huge fan of is the app library. The app library essentially is the app drawer, and it's where all your apps live. And if you're familiar with it at all, you know that it really is just an app drawer, and Apple has decided to curate the organization of those apps for you. I don't know why they feel a need to say, okay, this app goes in this category, this app goes in this category. Like, it's just unnecessary, completely unnecessary. If I want to put my apps in particular folders and order them a certain way, Apple has allowed you to do that for quite a while. And if you notice, my home screen right here is blank because I don't like folders. I don't like the fact that I have to start something up here in the top left corner. I mean, yeah, I am nitpicking, but it's Apple just imposing their way on the customer for literally no reason. There's no reason that apps can't just free form or free float around the home screen. And the same thing with the app library. It's really just a bunch of apps and folders, but those folders aren't created by you. They're created by Apple, and Apple gives them titles. I think you can edit them, but it's just one of those things where, why does Apple feel a need to exhibit that type of control? I mean, they already control everything else. I just want to put my apps, my app icons where I want to put them. And I think that's really about it. I mean, as I mentioned before, it's an okay product. I do like it. I like the size. This is the iPhone 12 mini, as I mentioned before. And in terms of size of phone, I really like this. It's very pocketable. But when it comes to those other things, I just say, well, without iMessage, do I even want this in my pocket anymore? And the answer is no. So I then need to get over the fact that, hey, if people want to send me text messages, fine. If they want to send me multimedia messages, then other options exist. So I'll be doing what I can to transition over to back to Android, and we'll see what happens in the future. I mean, chances are I'll probably end up putting my SIM card back in this, or getting an iPhone 13 mini just to have something a little bit newer. But at the moment, what I am doing, which I don't like that I have to do, in fact, I don't have to do it, I'm just choosing to do it, is I have this phone, my main SIM card is in it, phone calls, text messages, iMessage. It's pretty much all that I use it for. Okay, and then when I'm out and about, I'll have another phone in my pocket, and I use that phone pretty much as a content consumption device. So YouTube is on it, Spotify is on it, and I'm able to, or I choose to connect that phone to my car radio instead of connecting this phone. And the reason I do that, which again, personal preference, but when this phone is connected to the radio and somebody calls me, the call gets routed through the car radio, which, yes, it makes sense. It's connected via Bluetooth. The call starts ringing. I can see it on the radio. I could answer the phone call from the radio. But the problem is I don't have a microphone connected to my car radio by choice. I could install one, run it around, do whatever, but I don't want one because I don't want to talk through my car radio. I hear people all the time doing it, and it just sounds an absolute mess. So one thing I liked, even when I was only using an Android device, is that I can tell the phone to say, hey, send music through the car radio, but do not send call audio through the car radio. So I would answer the phone, and it would automatically either be on my handset, or it would be routed to whatever Bluetooth headphones I might have had at that particular time. So let me see if I can pull that up real fast in settings. Turn it on. And there we go. So right here, I am in the settings for my car radio, and see HD audio, phone calls I have turned off, media audio, content sharing. I'm not sure what that is, but I purposely turned phone calls off because I don't want the calls routed through the car radio, whether I had a microphone or not, because I think it just sounds bad and it's extremely obnoxious. So that's just another bit of customization, functionality, configuration that Android allows you to do that you just don't get here on the iPhone. And Apple could easily do it. And the reason I say that is now when you go into settings, there's an option to determine or to say, hey, what kind of device is this? Is it a speaker or some headphones, whatever? And of course, they're doing that so that way they can, I guess, allow the user to be cognizant of the listening volumes to maybe, I guess, protect your ears. But for that matter, like for that exact same thing, I can say, oh, this is a car radio or this is a stereo or something. Don't send call audio through it. Like I haven't attempted to, actually, no. Like a lot of these even Bluetooth speakers that exist, there'll be like a little microphone on it. One, sometimes it's for their smart speakers, so you have a voice assistant. But two, I can imagine it's for phone calls. And yeah, it's like I don't want that. So don't make it so I have to answer the phone, then tell the phone to switch the output device back to the phone. It's just unnecessary. So yeah, I'm sure I could find other things that I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, I will say one good thing about the phone is longevity of support. This is an iPhone 12, came out in 2020. I'm sure it's going to be supported until 2025 or 2026. I can't say that necessarily about any Android devices. I know Pixels are trying to do their thing, same thing with Galaxies. But overall, this particular, or Apple's phones in general, yeah, they are supported for a long time, so that's good. But if I'm not enjoying the experience as much as I feel that I could, then I think it's time for me to move on to something else. Another thing that I'll mention that really isn't the phone, but it is an Apple product, the Apple Watch. I feel the Apple Watch is it's a good product. I'm not going to say that it isn't. But what's the caveat? You have to have one of these guys in order to even use it. Which, you know, depending on how you look at it, might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. But yeah, you turn on the Apple Watch, brand new or after it's been reset, and the first thing it says is, bring it near your iPhone, so that way you can, start the pairing process. But if that that Apple Watch app were one available on other products, then yeah, you could pair it with a Galaxy or any other Android device, or even pairing it with an iPad. I mean, I don't see the harm in pairing it with an iPad, but since the Apple Watch app doesn't exist for iPads, you can't even do that. So one of my goals was to slowly, it's really not that hard, but to, I guess, get myself out of the ecosystem. So throughout the entire calendar year, I've had iPads, iPhone, Apple Watches, Macs, and it's, well, let me sell this, let me sell that, let me, give something to a family member, whatever. So I did have 2 Apple Watches, and I recently got rid of them both, so that's good. And instead, right now, I'm using a Fitbit Versa 2. I actually purchased this quite a while ago, maybe 2 years ago, so not that long ago. But in terms of what the Apple Watch was providing, I now am able to get pretty much that same functionality from the Fitbit. Not 100%, but close to what I need. Of course, it tells me the time. All right. I can use mobile payments with this, so tap to pay or hold near to pay or whatever you actually want to call it. Um, Notifications was the big thing, because sometimes when the phone is in my pocket, I don't always feel it vibrating. Or when I'm at home, sometimes I just rather have the watch on instead of having to carry the phone with me around the house, or always going back to check the phone to see if I have any notifications. So it's a nice companion device that I had way before the Apple Watches that I could have continued using, but one of the Apple Watches was a gift, so I did use it. And I had another one that I did buy, and I was using that exclusively for a fitness tracking device. And I know I could have used um, that the first one that I had to do the exact same thing. I know, in fact, I was for a little while. But one thing that I've noticed, which is pretty apparent, is that the battery life on a lot of these smart devices aren't that great. So when I'm using this little guy simply as a smartwatch and not a fitness tracker, battery life is pretty good. It's been a couple days since I've charged it, and my goal, yes, was to maybe only have to charge this thing once, maybe twice a week. Or whereas with that Apple Watch, when I only had one and I was using it as a smartwatch and as a fitness tracker, I think I was charging it almost every other day, and it's not that big of a deal, but I like not having to worry about it. And that kind of goes back to the whole USB-C thing, where I know there's not going to be a USB-C port on this, but it is another cable that I have to have laying around that I prefer to stow when I'm not using it. And then only have to take it out maybe once a week to charge this thing up, and then be good for the rest of the week. So, um, all in all, it's an okay product, but I'm going to do what I can to try to wean myself off their products. Um, it's not like we have a ton of choices, so the only other option really is Android if I'm looking to continue using a smartphone. Um, I'm looking at that Sony that I have, and I think I'm going to put my SIM cards, plural, into that. And that is another feature of the Sony where, don't need to talk about that right now. But I think that's going to be the end of this video. Definitely was a nice experience. I've been using this thing for over a year. And yeah, I think it's time for me to give Android another try. And I think the only way that I'll definitively stop using this is if I sell it. So I might end up listing this on eBay at some point in the near future. But I think it is time for me to end this one. And as always, have a good day.